Imagine walking for like 3 days straight through a freezing, relentless downpour in this sprawling swamp, dodging prehistoric crocolisks, and then crossing a treacherous ocean, all just to learn how to hold a piece of wood with a string attached to it.
Yeah, it sounds completely absurd when you frame it like that, honestly.
Right. I mean, today on the deep dive, we are tracking one of the most iconic, grueling routes in all of Azeroth. It's a young human rogue's journey from the stone gates of Stormwind all the way to the towering branches of Teldrassil. And the entire reason for this continent-spanning trek.
Just to learn how to use a bow.
Exactly, to use a bow.
Which, on the surface, it's just a practical gameplay errand. You just want to pick up a new weapon skill.
Yeah, a box to check.
Exactly. But when we look at the actual path this rogue has to take, it acts as this phenomenal, sprawling travel journal. If you strip away the grand banners and the kings and the political speeches, this specific journey reveals the true, raw nature of the Alliance.
It really does. It exposes that fragile connective tissue holding these completely different civilizations together.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it is, fragile.
And that connective tissue is our main focus today for you listening. Because if you want to understand how a massive intercontinental coalition actually functions, you don't look at the throne rooms. You look at the logistics.
Oh, absolutely. The unglamorous stuff.
Right. Specifically, we are going to explore why a damp, muddy, utterly exposed port called Menethil Harbor remains the Alliance's most vital transport link. And, what that reveals about the friction and cooperation between these races. So, okay, let's unpack this, starting with the illusion of safety. We begin at the gates of Stormwind.
Illusion is it's the perfect word for it. Because when you stand in Stormwind with those towering stone walls and the intricate network of canals, the bustling trade district...
It feels impenetrable.
It does. It feels totally permanent. But that architecture is actually a psychological shield. Stormwind is a restored kingdom. We have to remember that during the First War, this city was reduced to absolute rubble.
Just completely destroyed.
Right. The humans were refugees. Reclaiming and rebuilding that city took immense bloody struggle. So that heavy stone you see everywhere, it's a monument to trauma.
Wow. Yeah.
The devastation taught humanity a very harsh lesson, which is that survival requires alliances.
But all that beautiful stone architecture, it creates a false sense of security. Because if you're a rogue working for SI.7, which is Stormwind's intelligence and espionage agency, the walls won't protect you in the wilds.
Daggers are great for back alley politics, sure.
Exactly. But in a global war, if you're using daggers, it means the situation has already gone terribly wrong.
You're too close.
Right. You need to strike from a distance, you need patience, preparation, and the ability to start a fight on your own terms.
Yeah.
Basically, you need a bow.
Which you can't just learn in your backyard.
No, to get that training, you can't stay in Elwyn Forest.
Right.
You have to head north. And the way you do that is this absolute mechanical marvel. You take the deep run tram.
Oh, the deep run tram. It completely shatters the standard medieval fantasy paradigm.
It really does.
You step out of a traditional masonry city and just walk into an underground mechanized transit link. I mean, it's a massive vacuum-sealed tube running deep beneath the earth. It even has these glass enclosures where you can literally watch sea monsters swimming by.
I've always thought of it less like a standard subway and more like, the Channel Tunnel connecting the UK and France.
Oh, that's a good comparison.
Except, imagine it was built entirely by a group of displaced Silicon Valley engineers who are currently, crashing on the UK's couch. Because the tram wasn't built by humans, was it?
Not at all. It represents the absolute pinnacle of gnomish ingenuity.
The gnomes.
Right. The gnomes are a people who were displaced after the radioactive contamination of their own capital in Nomeregan. Yeah. They're refugees, essentially living as guests in dwarven territory.
But they pull their weight.
Oh, absolutely. Instead of just seeking charity, they bring this unparalleled technical brilliance to the human and dwarven military order. The Alliance isn't just a signed treaty, it is physically manifested in these roads, tunnels, and machines.
Okay, wait, let me challenge that for a second. If the gnomes have the technology and the capital to build a transcontinental underwater high-speed vacuum tube connecting Stormwind and Ironforge, why on earth do they make this poor rogue walk through a muddy, crocolisk-infested swamp later on?
Right.
Why not just build a tram all the way to the boats?
That is the exact question every single foot soldier in the Alliance probably asks while freezing in the mud.
I'm sure they do.
And the answer is a mix of geology and politics. So the bedrock between Elwyn Forest and Dun Morau is incredibly dense and stable.
Perfect for digging.
Exactly. Perfect for gnomish boring machines.
Yeah.
But as you move north toward the wetlands, the water table just rises dramatically.
Oh, yeah, it turns to mush.
Right. The ground is soft, seismic, and heavily saturated. You cannot build a subterranean vacuum tube through mud. And furthermore, the dwarves view the mountains of Cosmodan as sacred.
Okay, so there's a cultural barrier too.
Yes. They allowed the gnomes to bore a single line to their human allies, but turning their ancestral home into a sprawling subway network. That was a political line the gnomish engineers just couldn't cross.
Which means the tram drops you off at the end of the line and you step out into a completely different reality.
Yeah.
The transition is totally jarring.
It's sensory overload.
Yeah. You leave the open skies and political maneuvering of Stormwind, and you emerge into Ironforge, which is a city of fire, stone, and noise.
Just imagine the sheer volume of that place. You are deep inside a hollowed-out mountain.
The echoes alone.
Exactly. The air is thick. It's blisteringly hot from the Great Forge right in the center. The city is designed in these massive concentric rings, and the sound of hammers striking anvils is just a constant, deafening, rhythmic heartbeat. It is a pure industrial complex.
And this is basically the economic engine of the Alliance, right? Like, it's not just a cool underground fortress. The dwarves are financing the war machine.
They absolutely are. While humans provide, numbers and diplomatic expansion, and gnomes provide the spark of invention, the dwarves contribute the raw durability and the heavy artillery.
The hardware.
Right. They are the miners, the craftsmen, the engineers of firearms, and massive siege engines. Ironforge has never fallen because it is an impenetrable mountain fortress. But that impregnability comes with a massive logistical flaw.
They're suck.
Yes, they are entirely landlocked by impassable mountain ranges.
Which forces our rogue back out into the open world. I mean, Ironforge is the last true safe haven on this journey. You walk out the massive front gates and step into the freezing, snowy, heavily patrolled mountains of Dun Morau.
And you're walking north?
Right, walking north, the road starts descending, and then the environment just collapses into total misery.
The snow turns to a relentless rain. The mountains give way to sprawling marshes. You enter the wetlands.
If you've done this run, you know the exact moment your stomach drops.
Yeah.
You probably died to a Crocolisk or a Murloc ambush at least twice. Because the road here isn't really a road. It's this winding, exposed, flooded path where you're just fighting for every single mile.
And what you were experiencing, while running back to your corpse is the exact logistical nightmare that keeps the Alliance generals awake at night.
Wow, really?
Yes. This grueling road teaches the traveler about scale and supply line fragility. If we connect this to the bigger picture, when you are sitting in a tavern in Stormwind, the Alliance feels invincible.
Right. Safe behind the stone.
But out in the wetlands, the reality of the Alliance is mud. It is vulnerable supply lines, broken wagon axles, and isolated outposts where guards are just freezing in the rain.
So how do they actually manage it? I mean, if Ironforge is producing massive 3-ton dwarven siege engines and crates of heavy ammunition, how on earth are they transporting that through a literal mud pit?
With immense agonizing friction, they can't use standard wagons. The wheels just sink immediately. So they have to build specific flat-bottomed marsh barges, sometimes literally pulled by giraffed animals or even reinforced by magical means just to keep them from sinking into the bog.
That sounds like a nightmare.
Oh, it is. You have dwarven quartermasters screaming at gnomish engineers about weight distribution, while human escorts are frantically trying to fend off raptors. Surviving the wetlands forces you to realize that grand armies don't march on ideals. They march on the desperate hope that the mud doesn't swallow their dinner.
Which brings us to the absolute focal point of this entire journey. You survive the Crocolisks, you break through the tree line, and you step onto the exposed, rainy coastline of Menethil Harbor.
Finally.
It's chaotic. It's a hub of rotting wooden docks, massive ships, exhausted sailors, and heavily armed soldiers. And I have to push back on the very existence of this place. Here's where it gets really interesting. Why is the Alliance relying on this swamp-adjacent, highly vulnerable harbor as their main intercontinental hub?
It seems crazy.
Why not build a massive, beautiful, well-defended port right outside Stormwind where it's safe?
It's the most logical question to ask, and the answer comes down to unforgiving, brutal geography. You have to look at the map of the Eastern Kingdoms as a topographical reality.
Okay.
We established that the dwarven territories Cosmodan are essentially a geographical bowl surrounded by towering, impassable peaks.
Right, totally locked in.
They are rich in resources, but trapped. Stormwind is far to the south, separated by highly volatile territories, enemy strongholds, and even more mountains.
So Menethil is like the drain at the bottom of the bowl.
Precisely. Menethil Harbor sits at the exact geographical funnel where the mountains finally give way to the sea. It is the absolute threshold.
The only way out.
Yes. If the dwarves want to export those 3-ton siege engines, or if the gnomes need to ship their machinery to the front lines in Kalimdor, or even if Stormwind needs to move troops to the northern reaches, it all has to flow through the mud of the wetlands and out onto the docks of Menethil Harbor.
That sounds like a logistical powder keg. You've got all these different races with entirely different cultures and priorities crammed onto these sinking wooden docks trying to manage a global shipping schedule.
Oh, it is a powder keg. Just imagine the sheer racial friction on those docks. You have human ship captains who operate strictly on the tides and weather patterns.
Right.
You have dwarven merchants who refuse to load their precious cargo if it isn't properly insured and secured, completely regardless of the tide. And then you have gnomish mechanics who want to modify the ship's rudder at the very last minute to improve efficiency.
Wow, just total chaos.
Menethil Harbor is where the abstract idea of the Alliance crashes into the frustrating reality of daily cooperation.
It's not a choice based on luxury or even good strategy then. It's a choice based on absolute desperate necessity.
It is the undisputed center of Alliance logistics. Without Menethil Harbor, the entire coalition fragments.
It just falls apart.
Completely. The dwarves remain isolated in their mountain, their wealth and weaponry totally useless on a global scale. Stormwind is cut off from the vital sea routes to Kalimdor. That rainy, muddy, rotting port is the literal linchpin binding distant peoples together. If Menethil falls, the Alliance starves.
Standing on those docks, watching the waves crash against the wood, you really feel the weight of that. You aren't just on a local road trip anymore. Our rogue walks up the gangplank, boards a massive wooden sailing ship, and the journey fundamentally shifts.
It does.
We are leaving the known world for an intercontinental crossing.
The departure from the harbor is a profound moment of isolation. You watch the Eastern Kingdoms fade into the fog, everything this human rogue has ever known. The quarried stone of Stormwind, the forged iron of the dwarves, the whirring machinery of the gnomes, it's all left behind on that muddy dock.
The sea crossing is where you feel the world just violently expand. You're on this ship, surrounded by nothing but the crashing, endless ocean, sailing toward a continent that, to a human, feels entirely mythical. You're heading to Kalimdor. You're heading to the Night Elves.
And we really need to emphasize the cultural whiplash here. Night Elves are not just humans with pointy ears living in treehouses.
Right, they're not just elves in the generic sense.
No, they are an ancient, primal civilization. Their history stretches back over 10,000 years. Their entire society is anchored to the primordial forests, to their goddess Saloon, to deep druidic traditions, and to the magic of the moonlight.
Completely alien to someone from Stormwind.
Exactly. For almost their entire existence, they were completely isolated from the Eastern Kingdoms. To them, humans were just an irrelevant blip on the radar.
I'm really struggling to understand the politics here, honestly.
Yeah.
If the Night Elves are these immortal, deeply magical beings who literally live on a world tree to them, a human's entire lifespan is like, what, a long weekend?
Basically, yeah.
So how do they even negotiate a treaty with a human king who will be dead of old age before a Night Elf finishes a long nap? Don't they just view the humans and the dwarves as a massive chaotic liability?
What's fascinating here is that under normal circumstances, they absolutely would. A Night Elf general who fought in the War of the Ancients probably looks at a human diplomat like a toddler holding a hand grenade.
Seriously.
But the circumstances were far from normal. The Night Elves' ancient isolation completely failed them during the Third War. They faced the catastrophic invasion of the demonic Burning Legion and the relentless plague of the Scourge.
So their forests burned, just like Stormwind burned.
Exactly the same lesson, learned at a devastating cost. The Night Elves realized that the world had simply become too dangerous for any single power, no matter how ancient, magical, or immortal, to stand alone.
Wow.
The Burning Legion didn't care about their 10,000-year history, so they swallowed their pride and signed treaties with the short-lived, chaotic races of the Eastern Kingdoms.
It's an alliance of pure, unadulterated pragmatism.
It is a desperate survival pact. The Alliance is not a monolithic empire where everyone agrees on religion or politics or even basic societal norms. It is a very uneasy trust between vastly different peoples who have looked at the apocalyptic threats of Azeroth and realized they need each other's bodies, weapons, and magic just to avoid extinction.
That uneasy trust is palpable when the ship finally cuts through the thick mists of Kalimdor and docks at Aberdeen in the zone of Darkshore. The transition is just breathtaking. There is no bustling masonry like Stormwind. There is no deafening industry like Ironforge.
Not at all.
You are greeted by a heavy purple mist, towering ancient trees, and these tall, quiet sentinels watching you from the shadows.
The land itself feels conscious. The atmosphere is almost intimidating in its silence, which is a stark contrast to the clatter of Menethil Harbor.
And the final approach takes the road even further from their reality.
Right.
You travel through a mystical glowing portal at Rutherland Village, and you arrive at Teldrassil. And Teldrassil isn't just an island. It's a giant world tree, so massive it holds an entire ecosystem on its branches.
It's hard to even comprehend the scale.
Right, and at the top of it sits the capital city of Darnassus.
Darnassus is a living symbol of that ancient culture. The architecture isn't quarried and stacked like human cities. It's grown and shaped by druidic magic. It's a city built on the memory of immense loss, but also of natural renewal.
The contrast is just incredible. You think about where we started. The journey began with Stormwind's rigid stone, its military politics, its cutthroat espionage in SI.7, and it ends here, suspended in the branches of a world tree, surrounded by unspoiled nature, perpetual moonlight, and this ancient grace.
That's totally jarring.
It's like stepping out of a war room and into a dream.
And yet this dreamscape is where the journey reaches its practical conclusion. This is the payoff. Amidst all this ancient grace, our rogue finally locates the Night Elf Weapon Master.
Right, the entire reason they spent weeks traveling. They finally get to learn the bow.
But think about the roleplay significance here. From a mechanical perspective, sure, you hand over a few silver coins, you learn the skill, and you move on.
Check the box.
Right. But from a narrative perspective, this is a profound moment of cultural submission. Here is a human a race known for being ambitious, short-lived, and often pretty arrogant, who has crossed oceans, traversed lethal swamps, navigated underground dwarven tunnels, and survived the logistical nightmare of Menethil, all to stand before a civilization vastly older than their own and admit, I do not know everything, I have something to learn from you.
Wow. It's not just picking up a new tool for SI.7, it's adopting a fundamentally different philosophy. They are learning the patience, the distance, and the precision of the Night Elves, and bringing that ancient wisdom back into their own mortal toolkit.
The bow isn't just wood and string in this context. It represents the alliance functioning on an individual, personal level. It is the literal exchange of culture and survival tactics.
So what does this all mean for us? When we pull back and look at the entire map, let's summarize the true lessons of this deep dive.
Let's do it.
Stormwind teaches the psychology of resilience, how we build walls to protect ourselves when everything is lost. The Deep Run Tram teaches the power of connection, that our strength lies in the infrastructure and ingenuity that binds us together.
Absolutely.
Ironforge teaches endurance, the immovable industrial resolve that funds the fight. Menethil Harbor teaches the gritty, unglamorous reality of logistics, that grand ideals and massive armies ultimately rely on muddy, exposed bottlenecks and the painful cooperation of different cultures.
The hardest lesson of all.
Yeah. The Great Sea Crossing teaches the sheer, terrifying scale of the world. And finally, Darnassus teaches humility, that the Coalition is so much larger, older, and stranger than a young human from Elwyn Forest could ever comprehend.
And that ultimately is the heart of the matter. We look at the Alliance and see a blue and gold banner, but that's a facade. It is not a single unified culture. It never has been.
Yeah.
It is a beautiful, fragile, deeply flawed agreement between civilizations that look different, build different, and worship differently, but who desperately need one another to hold back the dark.
It makes you wonder. I want you to picture that young rogue standing on the edge of Teldrassil. They finally notch an arrow into their newly acquired bow, drawing the string back for the very first time. They look out over the purple mist, back toward the vast ocean they just crossed, knowing the sheer scale of the world, the mud of the wetlands, and the stone walls they left behind. And the question I want to leave you with is this. When they finally let that arrow fly, do they still see themselves strictly as a citizen of Stormwind, or have they truly become a citizen of Azeroth?